Okay, I'm going to fill you in on some stories that I've encountered with when I was being a delivery driver. I've driven all over the Denver metro area, Front Range, all the way down to Pueblo, all the way up to Cheyenne, all the way over to Glenwood Springs and Basalt on a daily basis. I've driven everything from cars to vans to limos and 26-foot trucks, and had put in a lot of miles. Probably well over 2 million miles in the Denver metro area alone. One of my first jobs I was working at a place called Barney Grove Supply, downtown Denver, down in the skids. Um, I was driving a early 60s Ford van where you sit over the front seat, motors in between the two seats, windshield's right here, the front end's right there. Kind of scary sometimes, but I got to learn to love it. You had the whole windshield with, it was like watching the world through the window. But anyway, um, I stopped to make a delivery and smelled something and opened up the engine cover and the engine was on fire. Well, that ruined that Friday afternoon big time. Another time I was driving a 66 Dodge van, same setup with front tires, motor was here. The batteries on these vehicles were right behind the driver's seat. And I'm driving down a real rough, sporty road, bumping all over the place, and a pair of tire chains popped up onto the positive post of the battery, shorted the battery out, blew the top off the battery right behind my seat. I bailed out of that van when it was still moving. I mean, that's something you don't do, but, I had no idea what was going on. For all I knew, it was on fire. It was really, really scary. I traveled a lot on I-70 through Denver, main highway through town. And at this time, Stapleton Airport was out there, and the north-south runway went over I-70. You went underneath I-70, and it was a bottleneck, a traffic nightmare. Well, one Friday afternoon, and it seems a lot of this stuff happens on Friday afternoon. I don't know why. But there was a bad accident, and they had a fire in one of the tunnels on the westbound side. Shut down the highway, and I'm probably 100 yards from getting into the tunnel, going on underneath the runway, stuck. It wasn't going anywhere. Traffic was backed up. You just one of those situations. You put it in park, shut it off, and I hopped out. And next thing I know, guy in the car next to me walks up and hands me a beer. Okay, I'll take this, man. Friday afternoon, watching a car roast down there, watching the airplanes take off. It was good. I-70 is notorious for bad accidents, man. They also had the United Training Center out there. And they had a big building that had the flight simulators on there. These were the first hydraulic operated flight simulators that they came out with. And plus it was all their live training facility. And they had a 707 plane which had four motors on it. But these motors were the huge motors that they had on the DC-10s and the 747s. It was training. The seats were filled with sandbags. They could vary the weight, everything, engines, the whole thing. Well, I'm cruising westbound on I-70 one afternoon, and had noticed here comes this plane down the runway, and right over the highway, He does an emergency pull up and bank right over the highway. I thought he was going to crash. I mean, the wing was probably no more than 10, 15 foot off the ground on the north side of the highway as he pulled off. Training, okay? They have to do this stuff. And I have a story later on where I'd actually seen something like that happen out there for real. And, you know, it was really, really scary. I-70, especially in the wintertime. My second job that I worked for was a place called Emmerich and Hill. And we handled, we made high pressure hydraulic hoses, but we also handled blasting explosives for the mines up in the mountains. Blasting caps, and we made a product called Prowl. And we'd get deliveries of these blasting caps, and the drivers would handle them like, you know, like nitroglycerin, and me and the other guy in the warehouse would just throwing them around. You know, you need an electrical charge to set them off, but anyway, people were scared to handle them. Occasionally, I had to go up to Empire, Colorado, and I would make the product that we called Pro. It's a blast booster. It is diesel fertilizer mixed together, which is very unstable, but they don't tell you what the most critical piece of that formula is to make it stable, and that's molasses. Molasses stabilizes it and makes it handle. You can handle it because without the molasses, a single spark from your body can set it off. Then I went to work for the newspaper downtown in Denver. It was called the Denver Post. I started off as what they call a home recovery driver. And back then, this was before the days of the internet and things like that there. Cable TV was just coming into a really big thing, and the Sunday paper had a paper version of the TV guide, which you had cable TV, you needed to know what was on, and it was very important. And this home recovery driver position I was in, we would go down and pick up 2 or 3 bundles of papers, or maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 bundles on Sunday, and we had a wireless radio system that was in a briefcase, and you open up the briefcase, put the antenna on the roof, plug it in your cigarette lighter, and you were hooked. You had transmission between you and the dispatch. Well, they would read you addresses for the people who needed their papers. And on the Sundays, sometimes you might sit there for 20 minutes writing down addresses because they had 40 or 50 people in this area that didn't get their papers because the route was down and they were complaining. And that was my job, to make sure that they got them taken care of. Which meant in all types of weather, in housing developments, and in new housing developments where there's no maps. I went on to be an ad messenger at the Denver Post, and back then, before the computers, all the ads were either photographs or hand-drawn pictures that, as a representative of the Denver Post, I would go to the customer, pick it up, which was their artwork and all the information, and take it to the newspaper, and they'd set it all up, take pictures of it, which was called a proof, and I'd deliver the proof back there, and then the customer would sign off on any changes they wanted done, or if it was okay, and sometimes that may be 2 or 3 times. And when I was in that position, I had to go out on my delivery area and come back 3 times a day. I would go out at 8 o'clock, come back around noon, and then come back in around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and do the last run between 3 and 5. Now that was in all weather, man. I mean, uh, sometimes we paired up in pairs in one vehicle, and just delivered our proofs just in case we got stuck. We had someone to help push us out. And there's a couple times snow was so deep we're pushing through snow, unplowed snow in parking lots, because we had to go into the shopping centers. We're pushing snow up over the hood over our cars. So in Colorado, you can get some pretty bad weather. Snows overnight. Um, Had an incident with road rage. I passed a gentleman. I guess I upset him. He followed me to my next stop, and as I was getting stuff out of the trunk of my car, he attacked me. And I'm laying in the trunk of my car, kind of half in, half out, and it took me forever. And studied martial arts for 20 years and never had to use it. And all of a sudden, I come out of the back of that trunk with this vicious, devastating backhand, and I mean backhand. Knocked this guy senseless, man. And I got his license plate number, called the police, had him arrested, filed charges against him. My boss uh, talked to the people that witnessed the incident, and there was one gentleman that witnessed the whole thing and said I was not at fault and I was just defending myself, because I could have lost my job. But since I was defending myself, I was able to keep my job. Another witness said, he goes, I didn't see very much what went on, but all I seen was this devastating backhand that your driver delivered to this guy. I actually bloodied his mouth. I hit him so hard. He was probably 20, 30 pounds heavier than me, and I staggered him. Just to show you what martial arts can do. Anyway, another incident I had, I was driving underneath 8th Avenue, underneath I-25, and a school bus was going the other way, and there were some kids in the back of it, and they had a wrist rocket. And they fired out a glob of modeling clay that came through my driver's window and hit me in the chest. With such impact, it flattened out about that like this. It was a ball about 3/4 of an inch wide, but it flattened out like that, hit me in the chest. Knocked my hands off the steering wheel. I almost crashed. Yeah. Kids thinking they're cute, thinking they're sweet, man. If that would have hit me in the head, it would have killed me. Had some bad things like that, man. I had 2 guns pulled on me. And as I'm driving down the road and you're in the way, people start honking at you, and all of a sudden you see a gun flashing down your rearview mirror, and it's like, okay, man, you're off and running. Another incident I had, I was taking a little afternoon break. I was on the south end of Stapleton Airport, and I was watching the airplanes take off. Hot day, nothing to do, just out of my area, just in case I needed to be there. And we had some storm clouds popping up, and I happened to notice that there's this huge dirt devil going across the airport in front of me. And I got out of my car and I looked at it, and it went up to the bottom of the cloud. I go, this ain't no dust devil, this is a tornado, a small one. And it starts going across, and all of a sudden I notice here comes an L-1011 DC-10 down the runway. He's beyond the point of no return. He has to take off, and here's this dust devil that's later turns into a tornado and touches down close to the airport. But as this dust devil, small tornado, starts going across the runway, here comes this airplane taking off. Point of no return. To this day, I have never heard those General Electric motors wound so tight, because when he got up off the ground, he jammed them things full throttle, did an emergency left bank. That wingtip was probably about 5 foot off the ground when he came out, and that little dust devil went right in front of him, and he cut behind him. That was an amazing piece of pilotry to watch. I mean, to watch, man. And then I hopped in my car and I started running. And I went around the east side of the airport and I kept looking up and I kept seeing the funnel. And I'm looking right up it like it's God's finger. And I boogie around and zigzag and stuff like that there. Finally, I jump out of my vehicle around 40th and Colorado Boulevard and get underneath an overpass. And I touched down probably a mile and a half from there. Actual touchdown tornado in Denver. It's been amazing. I mean, it was amazing to watch that plane and then to actually look up inside the funnel of a tornado as it's around. I swear it was God's finger, and he was pointing at me for some reason. Maybe because I was a bad person. I don't know. I was fortunate, I guess.